And then we're also going to turn to Colossians chapter 4. You want to find that quicker if you're in one of our Rock of Ages study Bibles there. You're looking at 877 and 1672 and 73. There's some parts to this I really want to get to, and I keep having to remind myself, just stay the course, go to each one first, but there's some of them that I guess excite me more than others, and I just want to jump to that and talk about that, and but I'm gonna try not to get ahead of myself. All right, a few people still turning. While you're doing, I'm going to read Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord God, my strength, which teacheth my hands to war and my fingers to fight. We said yesterday, David, not only did God prepare him for the battle in that moment, but God taught him how to fight the spiritual battles of life, how to reach beyond his years, how to prepare his people, how to change a nation. David was a warrior, a physical warrior. We knew he had blood on his hands. There were certain things God wouldn't let him do, but that didn't mean that he couldn't do other things, like prepare a nation. He prepared for the temple, though he couldn't build it. Though he couldn't fight in his older years, to the point that his men told him not to go out anymore, lest the light of Israel should be put out. David found a way to fight on. If it's in you, it's in you. If you got it, you're just going to do it. I think that's what gets a lot of moms in trouble when the kids come back home after having been out of the house for several years and stuff. They come back home and mom just wants to still mother them and wants to still lead them. I get it, Mom. But sometimes they should be quiet and listen to the mom to begin with. If it's in you, it's in you, and that's just that's a love that you have. David had a love for God, and he had a love for people, and as a result of that, David always wanted people to abound in the Lord. He wanted his nation to rise up. He wanted his nation to draw close to God. He wanted them to see the cause, and let that cause push them to do more, to fight more, to draw closer to God. I think today a lot of us, in many areas of our life, for example, I think we go to church and we forget the cause of why we go to church. I think we forget the cause of the church. It's not just so you can say, all right, I assembled together, that's done. I'm good with God. The church is to do more than that, is to go forward. All right. I'm going to read a few more verses, then we're going to jump over, because I know there's some passages here I really want to get into in Psalm 144, but we'll come back to those later. My goodness, my fortress, my high tower, and my deliverer, my shield, and in him whom I trust, who subdueth my people under me. Lord, what is man that thou takest knowledge of him, or the son of man that thou makest account of him? Notice those are not actually questions. We say it like it's a question, but those are not questions there. Man is like to vanity. His days are as a shadow that passeth away. David right there is trying to point out that we're, as Job said, man is a few days and full of trouble. He's talking about redeeming the time. It got me to thinking there's a couple spots where this is done. Moses talks about it, numbering our days, but there's a different emphasis in Moses's. Paul talks about it when he talks about redeeming the time in Ephesians. And then in Colossians, we have the same statement made of redeeming the time, but it's talked about a little bit differently. And I want to start there and then maybe give you a little object lesson, an illustration or whatever, and then we'll look at somewhere down the road, we'll look at another one with redeeming the time in Ephesians and try to help maybe give you a visual there that I think will help you to understand what he's talking about in a more full way, in a way that I hope inspires us all to redeem the time. Paul in chapter 4 of Colossians says, "Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. Continue in prayer and watch in the same with thanksgiving. With all praying also for us, that God would open unto us a door of utterance to speak the mysteries of Christ, for which I am also in bonds, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak. Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how you ought to answer every man." The redeeming of the soul winner, or the redeeming of the caring loved one. With David, he was the one who said, "Is there not a cause?" He wanted the people to see, if we don't go to battle, and we don't go to battle now, we don't do it right, we don't fight under the leadership of God, we're going to be servants to the Philistines. But if we do it right, God will give us victory, and we won't be servants to them. We'll be masters to them. The spiritual application there is, you can be a servant to sin if you want. You can be a servant to pride. You can be a servant to all the different things that you struggle with, or you can let God give you victory over it. We can redeem our time the way we fight. I think about like this. An easy way I think for a lot of us to see is, as I mentioned a little bit the other day with the holidays. Holidays, you have a love for your family members. You want to reach them. You want to talk to them. My wife, she got a little frustrated with me early in our marriage, and she still gets frustrated with me late in marriage. I'm not saying that's gone. Pray for her. She has to live with me, right? But she got frustrated in ministry a little bit because there were some people that I would quickly stop and go help. And then there were some that I would give them an answer, or I would take my time to do it, and she didn't quite understand why. And I said, "Honey, sometimes you have to teach people to value your time. You have to value, otherwise they come, they pour out with their need, and all they want to do is pour it out. They don't want to also then turn and listen for the answer. But if you have a desire to truly help them, you'll sit and listen, and then you'll search it out in the scriptures, and you'll give them an answer. But you have to learn that person. You have to understand, if I've said it to them 10 times and they're not listening, they're just not listening. But I still have a desire to help them. I could do one of two things. I said, they ain't going to listen, move on. Or I could learn to help them find a way to hear the truth. I said, so I'm not going to answer that person right now. I'm not going to drop what I'm doing and run. They already know I know exactly what they're going to say, and they know exactly what I'm going to say. Let them stew in it for a while. Let them think about it for a while. Then when I go back, I can be a little bit more forward with them, and maybe they'll hear it. So why didn't you just drop it and move on? Because I love them, and I want to see them get help. He gives us a formula for when we deal with people and when we talk to people here. Notice he says, continuing in prayer and watch in the same with thanksgiving. Watch in prayer? Yeah, watch in prayer. You've went to God. You've looked at the situation. You get alone with God. You're honest before God with your prayer time with Him. You're not hiding things. You can't hide something from God to begin with. But you're open before Him as if you truly believe that He knows everything about you. He knows the thoughts. He knows the intent. He can search you out. You're fully transparent with Him to the best of your ability. And then you bring to Him, God, and this is my desire for this situation. God, I wish I could reach this lost loved one. I wish I could get this backslidden child, this wayward child. I can combine the two together there. this wayward child to hear me and to draw back close to God. I wish they would hear in church what I hear. I wish they had a desire like I do to serve you, God. Then pray about it. And then watch in prayer. And as you watch God start to do things and unfold things, don't get ahead of God. Don't jump ahead of Him. Pray. Thank God. God, I see that, God, you're working in their schedule. I see what you're doing, God. Thank you. I know it's going to be hard. Help me to be mindful of what I say and when I say it. Thank you, God. God, help me to silence my own desires and to let you complete your desire. Help me not to get ahead of you. It says, continue in prayer. Just keep praying. Keep praying in faith, knowing God is doing it. And God knows not only you, but He knows them, and He knows the perfect timing and the perfect way to set things up. Often when we get ahead of God, we end up with Ishmael. And then God has to go through generations to undo it. They're still dealing with that in that part of the world today. God will fix it. He will resolve it. But imagine if He had just listened and said, "Okay, God, in your timing." Imagine if we just did things in His timing. To redeem the time, we need to change the way we think about stuff and the way we handle things. We need to spend more time in prayer and letting God lead us in what we say. Continue in prayer and watch in the same with thanksgiving. With all praying also for us that God would open unto us a door of utterance to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in bonds. I remember hearing about a gentleman. I'm going to be careful who, I won't name names here, but a particular person that I desire to see saved. I desire to see saved. They have no fruit. They've made a profession of salvation, but in my entire lifetime, I've never seen fruit. And then I remember somebody they knew who was a very hard man. God saved him and changed him. And they couldn't help but notice the change in that other person. And I realized what God was doing in their life as well. He was answering my prayer to see them. Only I may be part of, somebody else may have planted the seed way back. But I could see where I was a part of watering that seed. And now God was bringing somebody else along to pour more water in. And if we would just be mindful of it and not be forceful, God will bring the increase. So you know what I started doing? Praying for that other guy. God give him an opportunity to let the timing work out that they can get together and do this. This gentleman wants, come with me and do this. Come with me and do this. I don't have time. God give him time to go with that guy to do that. Maybe you don't want me to because that family connection there, that friend connection there, but you'll use him. I'll pray for him. And I thought to myself, I said, now I know who I need to pray for. And I'll continue to pray. And as I see God working it out, I'll thank God. Because the ultimate desire is to see that man saved. So I don't say things. I'm quiet when I want to say stuff. And I'm thankful that God is working in that person's life. Walk in wisdom towards them that are without, redeeming the time. Notice this, let your speech be always with grace. And then notice, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. I grabbed two things. I grabbed salt and seasoning. There's a time and place to put them in. You can put salt in before you cook something. You can put it in as you're cooking it, and you can put it in after you cook it. You see what you salt to what? There's a statement, salt to taste, right? So salt is nothing more, well, it's more than that. I should say it's nothing. Salt is a flavor enhancer. It allows you to taste all the flavors that have been developed in the food that's cooked.
It takes time for those flavors to be developed, but then you can enhance that. You can add salt at the moment. You can literally, I've watched people do it. Dip something in, get some food, and then salt what they're about to eat, and then eat it. Salt works instantly. Seasonings take time. You put this, oregano, you put that on food right before you put it in your mouth, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But if you put it in the food ahead of time, and you let it simmer, and you let it stew, and you let it work, and everything break down and work together, the flavor is much better. And then you can put the salt on it at the right moment and enhance that flavor. He's showing us here that he says, walk in wisdom towards them that are without. If you're walking towards somebody in wisdom, it's you controlling yourself. It's you spending time in prayer. It's you getting in the Bible and reading it more, searching out the answers for your own problems, so that you can correct things in your life, so that they can see God working in you, and studying out answers for the problems they have, so that when the right time comes, you can put salt on it. And they'll accept it, and it tastes good. You've spent the time in prayer and study, and not only prayer talking to God, but prayer listening to God. And then you're ready to season it with salt. You got to walk with wisdom towards people. That's redeeming the time. Redeeming the time is more, in this passage, is more about controlling you and who you are and subduing yourself, or allowing the Word of God to subdue you so that you can be used of God and not used of yourself. As I said yesterday, I don't know how much time you'll need to redeem back to reach others, but I'd say probably as much as you love them. I think we spend far too much time. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I've got about 2 or 3 more messages in this passage here, and so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I think the next illustration is going to be better. But I think we spend far too much time on the wrong things. And I think if we would just stop and examine some things and think, what could I get rid of that would better enable me to reach somebody else? I think we would find quickly the things that are not important and replace them with the things that are important. All right, TJ, give us a verse of a song. We'll be dismissed.